Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming out today. I appreciate it. So we're going to talk about breaking down the resistance to OpenStack and layering that cloud foundation. So by show of hands, how many of you have ever had to pitch a technology to your CTO, senior leadership, or anyone you've ever worked for? All right, they got one hand, two hands, all right, three hands maybe? All right, great. So this actual topic is very near and dear to my heart as I lived that life at my previous job that I worked at. So imagine me standing in front of my CTO with literally cue cards in my hand trying to pitch the reason why they should adopt and use OpenStack. So any of you who've done this before realize it's not for the meek of heart. It's not an easy job to do. Those who are not really technology savvy will come out with questions that you would never even think of to have answers for. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk through some of those questions that those individuals may ask and get you guys prepared to have some answers, because that's really important to have answers to those questions. This is just some information about me. I'm not going to spend much time here because I have very limited time, so we're going to move on. But I am a cloud solution architect working for Rackspace right now, and I particularly build OpenStack cloud. That's all I do. I say the word OpenStack about 20 times, well, actually 200 times a day, to say the least. But anyway, we can talk more about that at another time. So before getting into laying the foundation for OpenStack, you kind of have to lay the foundation for cloud. So the question of why the cloud, why OpenStack? And I like to use, funny cartoons because, quite honestly, that's the real world we live in. So imagine being able to just stand in front of individuals and say the word cloud, and people are like, oh yeah, that's a great idea, and then you go off and do your business. But particularly the information or statistics that I gathered around the cloud basically speak for themselves. Cloud is here to stay. Now, whether that cloud is here to stay is not the question. It's more about, is your company ready to adopt the cloud? And now more companies are obviously open to that, but these numbers definitely prove the fact that cloud is here to stay for sure. And I always say that cloud saved information technology. And the reason why I say that is because it offers so many great features, so many things that you couldn't get out of virtualization and even going back to dealing with bare metal. But despite that, why is it that there's only 68% of enterprises that run less than 1/5 of their applications in the cloud? Is there something missing? Why aren't all companies running their applications in the cloud? Well, there is some pieces missing to the puzzle, and some of that we'll talk through in a little bit. So before getting even deeper into trying to pitch OpenStack to your leadership, you really have to know the pros and cons of OpenStack. If you go in there and say it's a great tool and you don't really have concrete information around that, or you also can't really clearly explain to them some of the things that OpenStack may not do that well, they're going to shoot you down and send you packing, right? So you got to have both sides of the story. So these three pitches here is what I continuously use when I talk to customers about OpenStack cons. And you may say, well, what do these three pitches really mean, right? So the guy hitting the computer with his keyboard, right? If you've ever tried to install OpenStack from trunk, you've been there before, right? So we'll all be real about that. The good news is OpenStack has improved that process a lot better, and installations and a lot of different companies such as Rackspace, Mirantis have all made these things a lot easier. But OpenStack is not easy. Let's be real, right? It's not easy. It's not for the meek of heart. It does take work. And then you see the racer at the bottom, how he kind of jump-started and ended up losing the race because he jumped the gun a little bit. With OpenStack, you can't jump the gun. Just because a new service is released at a summit doesn't mean you can go back to your office and put it in production, right? It takes time. These services mature over time, so I always use the rule, wait for 2 summits to go by before jumping into using that new service. And you generally have a pretty good run at it. You want to use it in dev? No problem. You want to use it for anything non-production? Go for it, but don't use it in production, so don't jump the gun. And the last thing about OpenStack that could be a con is you have to tell OpenStack what to do. OpenStack does not automatically do things for you, right? So you have to know enough to know what you need it to do and tell it to do that. And it'll do it just fine, but just know that it's not going to do a lot of things automatically for you, right? So that's one of the cons of OpenStack. So now that we've spoken about the cons, we can talk about some of the positives, right? So I won't go into too many deep things here about that because everyone in the room should know all the positive things about OpenStack. That's the reason why you're here at the summit. But the use of commodity hardware, the being able to scale horizontally, being able to do availability zones, being able to split up your compute, multi-DC support, multi-tenant isolation powered by robust role-based access controls. And actually, the foundation itself does provide a 99.9% high availability, that it meets the high availability requirements. That's the standard out there. So these are just some of the things that are easy pros that you can pitch to your company when you're talking to them. So here now we're going to jump into having the answers for the hard questions. your leadership are going to ask you the hard questions. And these are just some of the examples of the hard questions you're going to get asked. So being prepared with answers will make that conversation a lot easier. You know, this software is open source. Who's going to support us? It's too new for us to use, so I think we should wait some time. You know, I'm not interested in supporting yet another hypervisor. We already have enough VMware crap in our data center now. Why do I want to add another hypervisor to that list, right? What are some of the hardware requirements? You know, does it have to run in the provider's DC? Can I run it in my DC? Where can it be run? So these are just some of the questions you're going to get asked. And these were actually the questions that I physically were asked by my CTO when I worked for my airline. So these are just some of the quick answers and some of the things that I always share with customers about OpenStack. And the one that I always lead with is OpenStack is not a hypervisor. And that's actually the biggest myth that I found about OpenStack that people believe. It's not a hypervisor. OpenStack manages hypervisors, but it's not a hypervisor itself. So you have to almost pitch OpenStack like it's a tool, less of a hypervisor or a virtualization technology. So that's the first thing I always lead with. Flexibility is power. As a production support admin, that I did that for over 15 years, I learned that flexibility is power. Having the flexibility of being able to scale your platform in many different ways, horizontally, adding services, doing things of that nature, is the power you need to run your business. So it's a piece of the puzzle, an important piece of the puzzle that OpenStack offers. Commodity hardware. I don't know about any of you, but I love the fact that I can run OpenStack almost any hardware that will support that runs an operating system that OpenStack supports. That's it. That is the prerequisite. Running an operating system that OpenStack supports, and that hardware can run OpenStack. So you can break out those old boxes you have sitting in your data center that are collecting dust because they didn't meet certain licensing software's or hardware requirements, right? So we won't name any names around that. Some more answers. IT morale booster. Now that may seem like that's not an important thing, but any of you who are in IT, which I'm sure is most of the room, is you eventually will start to become a stale, right? If you're not learning new technologies, if you're not expanding your horizons, your IT staff will get bored and will try to leave. So by introducing new technologies such as OpenStack, it's a morale booster. And you believe it or not, the productivity, the increase that will come out of your teams will shoot through the roof when you give them the opportunity to learn something that's cutting edge and new. That is a big selling point, so please keep that one in mind. 5 years and going strong, OpenStack is here to stay. Let's accept that, right? It's survived 5 years. This is one of the few open source projects or services that have survived this amount of time by code contributed voluntarily by individuals not being paid to do this. So it's here to stay. You can definitely convince your leadership that OpenStack is not going anywhere for a while. And of course, last but not least, answering that whole, well, who's going to support us answer. There are managed cloud providers out there, such as Rackspace, obviously Mirantis, IBM, HP. I'm not going to just be special and only mention Rackspace. But right, there are other providers out there that will support your OpenStack cloud. So you're not alone. Your leadership does not have to feel like they don't have the support they need to keep going. And at the very least, if you present all of that information and your leadership still is not buying it, just print this slide and show it to them. These companies are the top leaders in their industry. It's kind of hard to deny the fact that these companies have chosen to use OpenStack. And it's kind of hard to refute the fact that obviously they know something that your leadership didn't know about OpenStack. So at the very least, print this slide, hand it to them and say, these companies use it, we should use it. Let me know how that works out. Hit me up on Twitter. I'll be interested to hear some feedback about that. So again, I shot through that probably a lot faster than I expected to because 12 minutes, but thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate you coming out, and feel free to hit me up anytime if you ever have any questions or you want to talk about OpenStack on Twitter. Thank you again, guys.